Welcome back! We have another trigger tutorial waiting us. This one is to cover the unit creation handler, also known in Extended Edition as Y triggers. The idea of this trigger set is to find all units that are created on the map and apply handling to them. However, we need to filter down to what units we want to apply the handling to, and that is where I'm going to be introducing the conditional effects. Let's take a look at what we have on the map so far. We have our trigger loader set up as usual, and we've got a for loop which sets the stats on the catapults for both players 1 and 2. We've got the line of sight modified and the action range attack having the range changed. So let's take this forward, and we're going to use the system to modify the projectiles of the catapults to make it a little bit more interesting. To do that, we're going to create a unit handler that will find the projectiles that are created and change them visually. Let's make a trigger and we'll call it catapult shots. Unlike in Extended Edition, the trigger should just be active, not on loop. This is due to the differences in the way that it works. We'll now go to the effects, and we're going to want to create the unit handler. The unit created handler, sorry. There we go. You'll see on the trigger that it not only does have a normal brace, but it has this additional arrow. This means that the trigger is actually, the effects below are acting as a lander. Now a lander is an advanced data type where instead of holding a value, you hold some instructions, or you might say a function. In this case, we're going to create a lander which will hold all the effects that we want to run for every single unit that ever gets created, and this will be a handler. This handler that will get created will be added to the underlying system and will be called every time a unit has been created. So another way to think about it is a lander start like this indicates that the trigger effects below will be executed at unknown times in the future, once, possibly multiple times. We really do not know, as it depends on the type of trigger effect that we are using. In this case, it will be called every time a unit gets created. So, the effects below will be called for every single unit. We have a unit variable which will hold the ID of the unit, and this will be used to say which object to do things onto. However, the first thing we need to do is check that the object actually is a catapult projectile, because units get created for all sorts of reasons, so we need to filter this down. So in there, we're going to need to insert a conditional effect. So I'll just create one to show you. And that isn't what we want. It will be unit is proto unit. Let's just find it. There we go. So what a conditional effect is that every single condition here in this list, I have created an effect version with the prefix of if in front of it. What this does is it allows your effects below to be conditionally run on the condition you've just inserted being true. It is a little bit like the looping triggers that we put before, where we said that the effects below will be run so many times based on some looping condition. This one is similar, except that we are determining whether it runs at all or not. So in this case, we only want it to run if the object is a projectile. And so that's of the catapult, so that's what we're going to do. So we need to reference which the object is, and as I mentioned, we've got the unit ID variable, so let's put that in. Next, we need to check that it is actually a catapult shot, so let's put that in, search for projectile, and let's find the catapult shot. Every single conditional also has an option for not, where you can negate the condition. So here, if you want to check if it's not a catapult shot, you would tick this box to invert it. But in this case, we want to check it is one. Next, we can apply some effects onto it. So let's do something interesting and change the shading of it. Again, we'll need to use the ID version so that we can actually target the object itself. So let's give it a golden shading, and let's just give it a opacity of 100. And, well, the projectiles are a little bit small, so let's make those a bit bigger as well. So let's add a scaling, which for some reason isn't appearing. Oh, because it's called scale, not scaling. And again, we need to use the ID version in order to target the actual object itself. Oops, just make sure I spell that correctly. And here, let's make them triple the size. There we go. Now, similar to the loops, we need to end the loops, similar to conditional effects, and they need to be ended in order from most recent to least, or another way of thinking about it is you end the inner ones most first and then the outer ones. So we need to end this inner one, if end, and then we need to end the created handler similar to the other ones that need ending. So unit created. And there we go. Our catapult shots hopefully will now get modified. So as I mentioned, we have a normal active trigger. The effect is to add a handler so that the effects sandwiched in between will get run on every unit that gets created at some time in the future. We check for if the unit ID is a catapult shot. We change the shading to be gold. We change the scale of that unit. We end the condition, checking if it's approaching it. And then we end the created handler. Let's give this a run and see if it works. So there we go. We've got a very big projectile going over. And red's got similar. And look at that. We won. However, the red catapult was not very happy about the fact that we won that battle and has decided to make even more fancy projectiles on that. So in order to do that, we need to act differently depending on who owns the projectile. For that, we can make more use of the conditional effects. So let's go back in there. So at the moment, we've got every unit being put here. This one checks to see if the units are catapult shot, but now we want to make a check whether it's owned by a certain player or not. So let's put this in. If we want to check if the unit is owned. Just find that. That's not owned. There we go. Owned by player, and we'll just need the ID version. So player 2 wants special treatment, and we want to grab hold of the unit ID. And for that, we're going to make a different shading, and we'll have a different scale. So let's make the shading burning black projectiles, and let's make it extra burning by putting 200 in there. And not only did they increase things, they decided that they would have better projectiles. Of course, secretly we know this is not going to make any difference to the fight. And then we'll need to end it. Now, these are obviously in the wrong place, so we're going to need to move these effects up. So let's just sort that out. So we need to make that the conditional player. We want it to run if it is. So we got it is a catapult shot. We're checking it is player 2. They have his special case shading, but we want it to apply the normal shading if it is not player 2. So for that, we can use a conditional effect called the else. And what this does is it makes the effects run afterwards that don't match the condition. So let's just sort that out and I'll explain what is going on there. This end didn't get moved up. I need to sort that out. Okay, let's walk through this. So we have the unit creation handler. We check if it is a catapult shot. If so, we run the code inside. We check that it is player 2. If it is player 2, he gets his burning projectile with a bigger scale. If otherwise, this else response is for this ownership, it will run this code below, where instead it will make the projectiles gold as normal with the higher scaling. This end will then end the condition of the ownership, and then this end will end the proto unit check, and then we've got the end of the unit created handler. Let's give this a shot. Here's our bigger projectile, and he responds with his larger, blockier projectile, and look at that, he's still lost. And there you go. There is a demonstration of the unit created handler and some conditional effects. And as you can see, you can stack them inside of each other to condition on multiple things and using else to go through alternative paths. Like I mentioned earlier, you can have multiple handlers in multiple triggers. Make sure they're not on loop and you just simply add them once. Once you've done that, they'll act all the time. Otherwise, that covers everything for this tutorial. I hope you make some interesting maps, and I'll see you again next time.